Right, well, welcome. And many thanks for coming. And of course, many thanks for coming to you as well. So this is part of our Encounter series, which probably most of you know already, where we invite authors with their translators in order to have a conversation about not just the book, but also what becomes of the book in the hands of the translator. And so this evening we have Joachim Schmidt and Lee Searle here, which I find very exciting because I love books. And in fact, the first book that I read by you was the Tell book, which is a retelling of the Wilhelm Tell myth. But it is very much using this perspective, various perspectives. Those of you who've read it will know what I'm talking about. It's very multifocal, multi-voice, but you also have this interest in characters who are a little bit different. And the myth is told in a very different way than what you think you know. So I was hooked on that. And then I read the first Kalmann book, which was actually written before, wasn't it? It was before that. And in Kalmann, again, you have this, so it's set in Iceland. You have a hero or a protagonist who is slightly different, described as the Forrest Gump of Iceland. And you have a crime story set in the cold Iceland. And again, I was entirely hooked, and then went to the second Kalmann book, which was published in 2023. So that's very recent. Both of them have won awards. The Kalmann, the first one, received the Crime Cologne Award, and Kalmann und der schlafende Berg, which is the second one, got the Glauser Prize. So very much, valued for what they are. But for me, it was the characters, the kindness with which you approach the characters, and the community around them that really hooked me. So I look forward to hearing more, and I've been wanting to invite you since I read it. Jamie, it's wonderful to have you here as well. So Jamie is a literary translator from German and from Portuguese. And most excitingly, I think, and most recently, she's translated Kim de l'Horizon's Blutbuch. Yes, that's what I thought. Which won the Deutsche Buchpreis in 2022. So it's a difficult book as well.
Yes, definitely.
And Jamie has translated both Kalmann books as well, and a third book that we might get to talk about later as well. So this evening I thought we'd concentrate on the Kalmann books, but there will be time to also talk about Tell if we want to, and also Osman, the most recent book. So let's just start by talking about, just as an introductory way of getting into the subject, what was your main motivation for the Kalmann books? Was it Iceland? Was it the character? Was it the idea of writing a crime novel?
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. It's a big honor to actually come here and talk about Kalmann, who became my friend over these couple of years. I don't have an academic background, and I moved to Iceland in 2007. I've been on and off in Iceland for a few years before that already. But from the first moment, actually, I set foot on Iceland, I fell in love with the country, and I felt the urge to write. Very strange, a strange feeling, and hard to explain why. But just all of a sudden, maybe because I was far away from home, and of course you want to tell people at home about your experiences. I was working on a farm first. I grew up on a farm in Switzerland, so it made sense for me to work on a farm. The farmer didn't speak much, so maybe that was the reason too why I needed to get my stories out somehow. So I put them on paper, wrote my first book there on the farm, which was never published. Don't worry. But I found my love for the writing. I read a lot too on the farm. So my love for literature basically starts in Iceland. And to make a long story short, I was published in 2013, a small publishing house in Switzerland. I published my first novel, then a second one, and then a third one. And I didn't earn any money from this, nothing. Just a little bit. Of course, readings were very important in Switzerland, and in Germany too. You get paid for readings quite well, actually. So that was an important part to earn a little bit of money. But then by 2017, I had become a father, and some responsibilities that come along with fatherhood. So I realized I have to change. I have to do something. This doesn't work. So I told myself, okay, I'm going to do one more book, one more try, and if I don't earn any money from it, then it's clear. Then I leave it be. So I asked myself, okay, what actually sells? Of course, crime sells. Icelandic crime was very popular, still is. And on my book tours in Switzerland, in the bookstores, there's always piles of Icelandic crime novels right at the entrance, So I told myself, I want to be I want to be on this pile somehow. So I looked for a crime story. First, I chose a place, which is called Rauvarhöfn, which is the northernmost village on the mainland of Iceland. Iceland has a couple of islands around it. There's one village which is right at the Arctic Circle. Rauvarhöfn is a little bit below, so just below the Arctic Circle. And it has it's economically on a downward spiral. It used to be a town with over 500 inhabitants. By then it had 170. So lots of empty houses. I thought that's the perfect place for a crime novel. Somebody gets, is missing, and maybe there's a polar bear or whatever. And so I started writing I had a plot. And I had a main character, and that was the police detective, Birna. She, the police woman, she was the main character. She was supposed to be the main character of the story. And so she sent up there to solve the case of this missing person case. Only a pool of blood is covered in the snow. That's basically all that is left of that person. And the person who stumbled upon this pool of blood is Kalmann. And my initial thought was that he was sort of like the village simpleton, walks around with a cowboy hat and the sheriff star, thinks of himself as a sheriff of some sorts. So Birna, the police detective, she questions him. She meets him actually in a school building, because the school building now is half empty. And they have this conversation, and I started with that scene. It's not in the beginning of the book, it comes a little bit later. Right away, I knew there was chemistry. I was interested in this person. And by the time I finished the scene, I was completely in love with Kalmann. I thought, like, okay, this is the main character. I want him to tell me the story through his perspective. Also, the research I would have had to do about police work didn't really interest me that much, I realized. But the way that he would follow this case, describe it to us, that would have been the book I would have wanted to read. Then I thought to myself, this is my last time I write a book. And so I just do exactly what I want. And I don't lose too much sleep on how I do it or what. Just the joy of writing this story and going along with this strange dude. And during my writing process, I was really, one day I would think, wow, this is brilliant, this is going to be a hit. And the next day I would think, people are just going to laugh. They will hate this, nobody's going to want this, this is ridiculous. But I kept going and then Diogenes was interested, so it was not my last book.
Fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that. Lovely. I think we should start by reading the first extract, which is the very beginning of the book. And
Yes.
You've got it in English on your handout, and Joachim is going to read in German.
Eins, Schnee. Ich wünschte, Großvater wäre bei mir gewesen. Er wusste immer, was zu tun war. Ich stolperte über die endlose Ebene Mel-Rakasliata, hungrig, erschöpft, blutverschmiert, und fragte mich, was Großvater getan hätte. Vielleicht hätte er sich eine Pfeife gestopft und die Blutlache einfach zuschneien lassen, hätte seelenruhig zugeschaut, einfach um sicher zu gehen, dass sie sonst niemand finden würde. Immer, wenn ein Problem anstand, stopfte er sich eine Pfeife und sobald uns der süße Rauch benebelte, war alles gar nicht mehr so schlimm. Vielleicht hätte Großvater beschlossen, niemandem davon zu erzählen. Er wäre nach Hause gegangen und hätte sich keine Gedanken mehr darüber gemacht, denn Schnee ist Schnee und Blut ist Blut. Und wenn eine spurlos verschwindet, ist das vor allem sein Problem. Neben dem Eingang unseres Häuschens hätte Großvater sich die Pfeife an der Schuhsohle ausgeklopft. Die Glut wäre im Schnee erloschen und damit wäre die Sache erledigt gewesen. Aber ich war ganz alleine da oben. Großvater war 131 Kilometer entfernt und durchs verschneite Hinterland der Melrakasliata wandern konnte er schon lange nicht mehr. Also gab es auch keinen Pfeifenrauch. Und weil es schneite und einfach alles, mal abgesehen von der roten Blutlache, weiß war und man keinen einzigen Laut hörte, fühlte ich mich, als wäre ich der letzte Mensch auf der ganzen Welt. Und wenn man der letzte Mensch auf der ganzen Welt ist, ist man froh, wenn man es jemandem erzählen kann. Darum erzählte ich es dann doch und damit fingen die Probleme an. Großvater war Jäger und Haifischfänger. Jetzt war er es nicht mehr. Er saß meistens auf einem gepolsterten Stuhl im Pflegeheim in Husavik und schaute den ganzen Tag aus dem Fenster und schaute doch nicht. Denn wenn ich ihn fragte, ob er etwas Bestimmtes sehe, gab er meistens keine Antwort. Er brummte und guckte mich komisch an, als störte ich ihn bei irgendwas. Sein Gesicht war nun die meiste Zeit verdrossen, die Mundwinkel zeigten nach unten, die Lippen zusammengepresst, so dass man gar nicht sah, dass ihm 4 Zähne fehlten, oben die ganz vorne. Er konnte niemanden mehr beißen. Manchmal fragte er mich, was ich hier zu suchen habe. Ziemlich barsch fragte er das, worauf ich ihm erklärte, ich heiße Kalmann und sei sein Enkel und besuche ihn einfach nur wie jede Woche, also kein Grund zur Sorge. Doch Großvater warf mir misstrauische Blicke zu und schaute wieder aus dem Fenster, total mürrisch. Er glaubte mir nicht. Ich sagte dann nichts mehr, denn Großvater guckte wie jemand, dem man die Pfeife weggenommen hatte. Und darum war es besser, ich sagte nichts. Eine Pflegefrau hatte mir geraten, Geduld mit Großvater zu haben, so als wäre er ein kleines, beleidigtes Kind. Ich müsse ihm immer wieder alles erklären, das sei ganz normal und so sei das Leben nun mal, denn manche, die das Glück hätten, ein hohes Alter zu erreichen, würden in gewissem Sinne wieder Kleinkinder, denen man beim Essen helfen müsse, beim Anziehen, Schnürsenkel binden und so weiter. Einige bräuchten sogar wieder Windeln. Alles gehe rückwärts wie ein Bumerang. Was das ist, weiß ich. Das ist eine Waffe aus Holz, die man in die Luft schleudert. Ein Bumerang eben, der dann in einem Bogen wieder zurückfliegt und einem den Kopf abschneidet, wenn man nicht mordsmäßig aufpasst. Ich fragte mich, wie das mit mir sein wird, wenn ich mal so alt bin wie Großvater. Denn es war noch nie richtig vorwärts gegangen mit mir. Man vermutete, dass die Räder in meinem Kopf rückwärts laufen, kam vor. Oder dass ich auf der Stufe eines Erstklässlers stehen geblieben sei. Ist doch mir egal. Oder dass in meinem Kopf bloß Fischsuppe sei. Oder dass mein Kopf hohl wie eine Boje sei. Oder dass meine Leitungen falsch verbunden seien. Oder dass ich den IQ eines Schafes habe. Dabei können Schafe gar keinen IQ-Test machen. Run, Forrest, run, riefen sie früher im Sportunterricht und lachten sich krumm. Das ist aus einem Film, in dem der Held behindert ist, aber schnell laufen und gut Ping-Pong spielen kann. Ich kann nicht schnell laufen und auch nicht Ping-Pong spielen. Und früher wusste ich nicht mal, was ein IQ ist. Großvater wusste es zwar, aber er sagte, das sei nichts als eine Zahl, um Menschen in Schwarz und Weiß einzuteilen, eine Messmethode wie Zeit oder Geld, eine Erfindung der Kapitalisten. Dabei seien wir alle gleich und dann verstand ich überhaupt nichts mehr und Großvater erklärte mir, dass nur das Heute zähle, das Hier, das Jetzt, das Ich, hier mit ihm, fertig. Das verstand ich. Er fragte mich, was ich machen würde, wenn ich draußen auf dem Meer wäre und Sturmwolken aufzögen. Die Antwort war einfach, so schnell wie möglich in den Hafen zurückfahren. Er fragte mich, was ich anziehen würde, wenn es draußen regnete. Einfach Regenkleider. Wenn jemand vom Pferd gefallen wäre und sich nicht mehr bewegte. Kinderspiel, Hilfe holen. Großvater war zufrieden mit meinen Antworten und sagte, ich sei geistig völlig auf der Höhe. Das sah ich ein. Aber manchmal kapierte ich einfach nicht, was gemeint war. Kam vor. Dann sagte ich lieber nichts. Das brachte es dann einfach nicht. Denn niemand konnte die Sachen so gut erklären wie Großvater.
Thank you very much. Lovely introduction to the character, and the character, really sort of grows in there. You feel his inside working, as it were. You feel how he thinks. And what I also love about this passage is how your storytelling is very oblique. You mention the blood, you mention the Blutlache, and then again a little later the Blutlache, but we are still unclear what's actually happened there. So it comes in slowly. The character is more important. And in fact, the Großvater at this stage is just as important as the character.
Yeah, I do believe actually in the end I failed writing a crime novel, a proper crime novel, because I was more interested in Kalmann.
Yeah.
And then too, I was interested in the village and the people living there. So the crime story, during the writing, I had to remind myself, I should go back to the crime element. So somebody maybe had to die in between. But my attention went often to other. you know, you could wonder what the diagnosis of Kalmann would be, and I told myself not to do that, not to diagnose him with anything. However, I do have my suspicions, and you know, from learning disability, probably somewhere on the autistic spectrum too, I guess. But definitely some ADHD, you know, where the story goes just from one thing to the other, just wherever that he and me too are interested in telling.
Jamie, tell us what you found interesting. Why did you want to do this?
There's something about, I was thinking earlier, because I'm trying to think when it was that I started working on them. So the very first translation job I ever had, back when I was doing my master's in kind of 2008, 2009, was for Diogenes. I used to translate their catalogues, so upcoming titles. And they would occasionally ask me to do a little sample or a longer sample translation. And then when the first Kalmann came out, they asked me to do that. And I loved working on it. It was just so much fun.
So they asked you straight away to do the whole book?
No, that was to do a sample. So it was probably a chapter, I think.
Right.
And I really enjoyed it, because with sample translations, I wouldn't do anything that I really didn't like, because then it's better to pass it on to somebody else that connects more with the text. But obviously within what you like, there are still different levels in terms of how much you enjoy it. And so I did that and thought, you know, it'd be nice if something comes of that. But in terms of the full length books you get to do as a literary translator, from the number of sample translations you do, it's still kind of needle in a haystack. And then Bitter Lemon bought the rights. I knew of them. I knew that they focused on literature and translation, on crime, but I'd never worked with them before. And Francois, their publisher, wrote to me and said, we required Kalmann, we really loved your sample, would you like to do the whole book for us? So I didn't need to hesitate at all. And I think that one of the things with working on, so both the Kalmanns and now the Osman, I felt definitely with the second Kalmann, it was like meeting up with an old friend that you haven't seen in a while, but you have this shared language that you just fall back into. And I think because I'd already, in the process of the first one, you know, got to know the character, and just, as you said, he became your friend, and I feel the same way. And I don't think I've ever really spoken in that way of other books I've done. I've, you know, enjoyed the characters, but not in that kind of just having so much fun with them.
Your expression "shared language" is really interesting. So, what do you mean by that, shared language?
That when you, I think with certain friendships that go back years, you have certain phrases that might not make sense to other people, but they do to you. And that only really struck me when I was working on the second one, I guess because of having had the experience of the first one. But I remember I worked on it a fair bit when I had a residency in Switzerland near Geneva, at a place called Chateau de Livigny. And they had given me the residency to work on Blutbuch. But each day I would give myself an hour or two in the afternoon where I kind of gifted myself a bit of Kalmann, because although Blutbuch was also a great project, it was very difficult. And I just felt like I needed to work on something that was just, I didn't have to tear my hair out. And it just, I remember sitting in this tiny little room that I was working in, because for some reason there was this massive place with beautiful big rooms, and I found this closet to work in because it just felt better. And I would just sit there, and it just felt like hanging out with an old friend. So I think the phrases and terminology that Kalmann has in terms of things like, you know, no need to worry and correctamundo and all that kind of stuff, it just felt like just slipping back into it.
Yes, these repeated phrases, they are important, aren't they, to build up the character?
I think so. However, they come about obviously later in the process. I didn't really have catchphrases for him, but But then once he started to repeat himself, I realized, oh, that this is actually sort of, even though it's not a big deal, but then it became sort of a big deal. And actually, I'm wondering about correcto mundo, because I remember, he has this friend, Noe, who is like a computer nerd. And they have a shared language too, in a way, you could say. When they two interact, there's a very specific vibe going on. And Kalmann is picking up a lot of phrases and repeating them. So often, sometimes he sounds a little bit like his grandfather, who is the biggest person in his life. And sometimes he sounds a little bit like his friend, Noe. And probably he picked it up from there. And I was wondering about this correcto mundo. So I started, why did he say that? So I went to research, and then I was like, actually, it's correcta mundo. And then I thought, that is so funny, because probably, and correcta mundo is said in the Pulp Fiction movie of Quentin Tarantino. So I thought, Noe probably seen that movie, but then he's said it wrong. He said correcto mundo instead of correcta mundo. So I was really happy with this. And then the book was translated into Icelandic. And it sort of slipped through that he used the right way of the correcta mundo, even with the C and all. So it's funny, and then I sort of realized, no, actually this is not the right translation. It has to be correcto mundo. I'm not sure how you did it in the end.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now. I think that might have come up with it. Now you're saying that, I feel like that might have come up in the copy edits, but I can't actually remember.
Yeah, it only later I realized the importance of it, and it is not important at all.
But I love how you say, this is what Noe says, and then I look it up.
Yeah.
You're the author.
Yeah, that's right. But sometimes if I get into a right flow, which is my goal, doesn't work always, sometimes, and it just comes out, and then I have to go back and see, okay, where does this actually come from? Or maybe Noe, there's a piece of me in Noe too, and I have seen Pulp Fiction, and I have misinterpreted.
But it's a brilliant mixture, isn't it, of letting the characters speak and develop from there. And on the other hand, you have full control, like what I meant with the reference to the oblique storytelling. You have full control of you put in the Blutbuch twice, but you don't tell us. And in fact, the whole way through, we only learn at the very end what really happened. So you have very tight control of the plot.
Yes. Now I do. But you should read the first draft. That's, of course, I do a lot of rewriting or editing, and this, I like this. Yes, when
So another aspect, of course, is the Iceland. Not just the village, but also Icelandic weather, Icelandic landscape. And you, Jamie, picked a snippet of the text that you wanted to read, and so let's do that now. Mm-hmm. So you're going to read in English, and we have the German original in the handout.
This laptop, right?
Let me just check.
Yeah. I went up to the lakes, which until recently had been frozen over and covered with a layer of snow. Now a pair of whooping ones were gliding through the water. It's always the same couples, every year. That's why swans are such romantic creatures. They're loyal to one another and their little lake. Sometimes I wished I were a swan. I sat down on a rock with the warm sun on my face, ate chocolate and thought. I would have liked to lie down on the grass, but the ground was still damp and cold. From here, I could no longer see Röferhoven. Just moss, brown grass and rocks, decorated with lichen as far as the eye could see. If I hadn't been able to see the Arctic henge in the distance, I could have easily been on another planet. Sitting alone in this landscape was like being out at sea, but completely different. The Meldakersletter rose and fell, swaying like shallow waves, even though it was, of course, completely still. One of the green lakes lay at my feet. There were fish in these lakes. I often used to go angling with grandfather, and we would stand in our waders in the water, which shimmered golden in the midnight sun, for hours on end without speaking, standing there and angling. And sometimes we came back after midnight with 6 Arctic char. That's pure bliss.
Lovely.
Why did you want to read this?
I think the description of the landscape is such a big part of these books and of your writing for me. And I just think, in terms of translation, like some works I've translated that are set somewhere completely different, so that have taken me beyond the kind of German-speaking countries that I would usually be culturally focused on in the translation. I really like that because it's kind of pushing me outside the usual borders of what I'm looking at, and it just feels so captivating the way the landscape's described in there.
Mm. Did you have to look up? I mean, did you know what a Seesaibling is?
There were certainly some of the nature elements that I remember asking Joachim questions about, just to make sure, flora and fauna, that kind of thing. But I did a lot of Googling and, Google Earth and looking at the Arctic henge and all that kind of thing. Because it's fun. Even if you don't actually need to look something up, it's fun to try and put yourself into the territory. And
so you use the visual,
yes,
to help you understand the text. That's really interesting. And do you feel it's well translated? What a question. I'll take that spot.
No, actually, thank you, because this is so lovely, and I wasn't sure. Obviously the way you translated it is really beautiful, but also the way you read it was really nice. So I was there right away. So I love the translation.
It's the stillness, isn't it? That is conveyed in your translation very, very well. So I've taken. So we can have a look at the snippets that we talked about. They are just very, very short sections where I think you were detecting some difficulty in translating. Can you take us through these? They are. Oh, sorry.
Oh yes, I can see this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, could you just read the German and then we'll...
Yeah, but this is so they have this rescue team assembled, and they go look for the missing person. And there's some Icelandic humor in it. Birna blickte Arnór an, der nickte und hob die Hand zum Gruß. Nichts gefunden, sagte er. Ein unterdrücktes Kichern ging durch die Menschenmenge. Arnór blickte aber ganz ernst, und weil seine Aussage die Leute amüsierte, auch ein wenig verwirrte. Ja. Birna fuhr fort, eine DNA-Probe ergab.
So what was your thinking about this?
So in the initial drafts of the translation I had, I just felt that when I was staying quite close to the original text, that the humour wasn't really coming across properly. And I think one of the things I like about translation is, people tend to talk about loss in translation. And I don't think we can avoid it. There are times where you do lose something, but I try and look at it as almost like you're imagining, say, the original text and their translated text are old-fashioned scales. And I feel that if at the end they're like that, that I've kind of done the job. But it doesn't necessarily mean that things are all in the same place. So you might have losses in some places, but you gain something in others. And so I felt that you get little gifts in the English. And the fact that we have this saying of kind of leaving no stone unturned when you're looking for something, at some point in the drafts, that phrase kind of popped into my head. And I thought that would add in. And so obviously you kind of checked with Joachim and, you know, I pointed it out to the editors that I'd made a change there because...
Jane, can you give us the translation? Yeah.
So it did, you know, it did require slight other change as well because we don't have Arnor saying that he kind of had a serious look and he was a little bit confused. So we changed that and just had Arnor didn't smile just to make it work. But that's it, you know, I had a lot of fun with those bits. So.
But so you referred to the Arctic stones, which is the place where the blood has been found. And that works really nicely with the stone unturned. So that is entirely your addition. That's not in the origin, but it conveys things. That's, I really like that because it shows the freedom of the translator. And it works extremely well in the English.
Absolutely, yeah.
So did you find that a bit weird that your text was changed in that way? Or
no, because I mean this one sounds really like I had written it in a way, or it is the same humor, but it's different, you know. So it made absolutely sense. You probably asked me for that one, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I must have said yes, I guess. But seeing it again, you know, that's how I would wish that the translation is.
So the co-creation.
Yes. It almost bothers me more if something is just translated, but then it doesn't really make sense in that particular language. But if it tries to stay true to the original text too much, that can be not good.
There was one other that we are going to one other section. It's actually the last lines of the book. Jane, if we could have the next one. So, aber aus dieser Entfernung konnten wir den Wal natürlich nicht sehen, denn so groß wie man denkt, sind die gar nicht immer. Ein Riesenhai kann doppelt so groß wie ein Zwergwal sein. Das ist die Vielfalt, das ist die Natur. So that was a complicated one to deal with because of the names, was it?
I think I wanted to be more creative than this bit. And it's possible that I still feel a little bit now like, could I have done something a bit more like I did with the stones with that? But in the end, sometimes if you're trying to force it, it overcomplicates. So even though the English translations of the particular sharks wasn't as fun, I felt that it was better to stick with what he was actually talking about. And I feel that it's still... I remember pointing it out to the editors and saying, this isn't quite the same, but do you think... And they were happy with it. So,
Jane, can we see because whales aren't always as big as you might think. The basking shark can actually grow to almost twice the length of a minke whale. That's diversity, that's nature. So you lose the Riese and the Zwerg.
Yeah.
But you have the correct.
The actual, I felt that because nature was important in the book.
Yes.
I didn't want to... For the sake of putting some kind of humorous part in there, I didn't want to lose what he was actually talking about.
But that's a real case where it's not just word for word translation because you can't think of anything else, but you're really, it's a strategy you're thinking about. Right.
Yeah, and that's, I think, also something that probably got drummed home to me more since working on Blutbuch as well, that strategies can't. I think if you try to be too consistent with them, even within one book, that doesn't. Because people always say that, you know, when you're editing a book, oh, we should be consistent. And to a certain extent, yes. But I think with translation, you need to kind of hop around a fair bit as well, because otherwise it can be too restrictive.
Yeah.
To try and be consistent all the time.
Okay. Next, I would like to come to a section which deals with an interview, a police interview, and I think that section will really throw up how other people react to Kalmann and this sort of sense of community, which I think is very important in the book. But I'm wondering, are there any questions or any comments that you would like to make in there before we go on to the next steps?
I have one little question on the Icelandic translation. You know, a crime writer like Donna Leon, she sets all her novels in Venice, but she says they cannot be translated into Italian because she thinks it wouldn't work, or the Venetian themselves might reject it. Did you get a good reception in Iceland?
Well, I thought about this too a lot, obviously. The first couple of books that I've written, I kind of sort of knew they were not going to be translated because it was such a small edition. But with the Kalmann, I noticed even Icelandic writers changing names of towns just so they don't get criticized for getting the street names incorrect. Or Hallgrímur Helgason, he talked about this a little bit. He did a trilogy on basically the story of Siglufjörður. 60 Kilos of Sunshine is the first one. Highly recommendable to read. But he changed Siglufjörður to Segulfjörður, just to have this freedom of adding some stories to it. And I was wondering about this, which way should I go? Should I be really distancing myself from this town that exists? Should I change a little bit the names? But I decided to go all in and have all the names right, the street names, the Arctic Henge installations, like an art installation they have up there. All of that, the history of the town. I, however, realized that I was not going to be able to stick to reality. It's really hard to write about reality. The 170 inhabitants, I will not be able to describe them all. So the villages, the population seems even smaller in the Kalmann books. When you get there, you will realize, there's actually something going on here. So I was a bit scared, actually, how they would take it. But they loved it. So they were really happy with the first book and then with the second one too. Just at the same time understanding that those are fictional stories, people are not stupid. And but having a blast at their village, their name, and the Arctic Henge and everything is now to be found in a book, So I was happy, and I would suggest to Donna Leon too, maybe she shouldn't be so scared about them, But then again, I don't know how Venetians are. Maybe they are a little bit different.
They might be more snobbish.
Could be more snobbish than the people in the river.
There are more books about Venice than now.
Yeah.
It's great, because it could have gone both ways, I suppose.
Yes, and maybe there's I remember there was a highly respected person from Raufarhöfn. Used to be, I think, a priest up there. Icelanders, they're all on Facebook. Facebook is a really big thing up there. And very early on, he wrote a long post about Kalmann. And he said, this is good. We have to embrace this. And that sort of, I think, helped me a lot, just to get a couple of voices who really were important to sort of set the tone. I think I have to thank a few people for that. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions now? If not, we'll move on. So, do you want to set the scene, Joachim? What is this interview about? So we're coming to the interview that's conducted.
Right. Well, the news media, of course, is they get the message that the richest person in town is missing and probably not alive anymore. So obviously they have to go there. There's a sort of a media circus going on, but small scale or röverhöp scale, you can say. So this quiet fishing village becomes a bit more exciting, maybe a bit too exciting for Kalmann, who kind of likes everything to be as it is, as it usually is. So he is being asked for a TV interview. We're talking about this, yeah? And I loved, that what I found interesting that the people, the villagers, they know Kalmann well. And he has a place within the society there. Everyone knows how he is, how he functions, how to talk to him, But then you get people from the outside, like from the rescue team, the police, or the media, the news media. They don't know who this guy is, so they sort of approach him not the way they should, which sometimes can lead to, some outburst of anger or even a little bit of violence, maybe. Yeah. So I loved to have normal people, meeting Kalmann, and they would look a little bit stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, could you read from when?
Yeah, you have to help me.
So if we go from glaubst du,
Yeah, this right until
until there.
until here.
Yeah.
Sure. So they set up there's some extra light, and the cameraman is ready, and they have been talking already a little bit. Glaubst du, dass das Blut von Robert Mackenzie war? Ja, das glaube ich. Warum glaubst du das? Wusste der Reporter denn nicht, dass man nach Robert suchte? Und wem hätte es denn sonst sein sollen? Na, weil er verschwunden ist. Glaubst du, dass er umgebracht wurde? Nein. Du glaubst es nicht? Nein. Und warum glaubst du es nicht? Ich zuckte mit den Schultern. Das Interview war nun doch wie ein Verhör. Und damit kannte ich mich aus. Ein Eisbär hat ihn vielleicht gefressen, sagte ich. Er hat wieder in die Kamera geguckt, murmelte der Kameramann. Macht nichts, sagte der Reporter genervt, wischte sich mit der freien Hand die Perlen vom Kopf und betrachtete seine nass gewordene Handfläche. Kannst du mir noch einmal sagen, warum du glaubst, dass Robert Mackenzie verschwunden ist? Ist gut. Dann sag es. Ein Eisbär. Nein, ausführlicher. Ich weiß es doch auch nicht, murmelte ich. Ich wünschte, ich hätte den Eisbären nicht erwähnt. Nein, doch, nochmal, so wie vorher, aber ohne in die Kamera zu gucken. Warum, denkst du, gibt es von Robert Mackenzie keine Spuren? Ich musste da jetzt einfach durch. Ich verteidigte mich. Manchmal kommen Eisbären von Grönland nach Island. Schon wieder, sagte der Kameramann resigniert. Ich stöhnte und schaute mich hilfesuchend um. Wie lange dauerte das denn noch? Das macht jetzt nichts, zischte der Reporter und schob seine Brille aufs Nasenbein. Kalmann. Hat die Stelle so ausgesehen, als wäre jemand von einem Eisbären gefressen worden? Nein, sagte ich. Nein? Keine Chance. Aber wieso glaubst du, dass ein Eisbär... Ich weiß es doch auch nicht, brüllte ich, sodass sich die beiden Männer vom Fernsehen versteiften. Neben mir an der Hallenwand stand ein rostiges Ölfass, das oben Löcher hatte und ganz mit Regenwasser gefüllt war. Ich trat es mit den Füßen, klunk, klunk, zweimal, also so dass das Wasser aus den Löchern spritzte und mein Cowboyhut fast vom Kopf rutschte. Eigentlich ganz lustig. Darum trat ich das Fass noch einmal, aber fester, was dann doch ziemlich weh tat. Ich fragte mich ernsthaft, ob ich einen oder mehrere Zehen gebrochen hatte. Darum humpelte ich davon und weder der Reporter noch der Kameramann sagten ein Wort. Sie ließen mich einfach gehen, schauten mir baff hinterher, aber ich weiß nicht, ob mich der Kameramann noch filmte.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's exactly what you said beforehand. It's this, we have the character development, we understand how he thinks, and we see how people cannot really react to that, don't really know how to handle things. It's a very different way of writing, isn't it? When you compare that to the nature description, it's a very different tone. And so, as a translator, you have to find that very different tone. So, is that something that you communicated about, or how did that work?
I don't think so, no.
No, we were saying earlier that for the first book, the communication was initially through the publisher, and then by the end of that, we were talking directly to one another, I think because we did an online event. So ever since then, we've sent emails directly back and forth, which I think makes the process more enjoyable. And even just little things, like I was on a walk, I think it was last year, but in a small village near where I live, and there was this old building and it said Sheriff's House above the door. So I took a picture and sent it to Joachim and I was like, look, Kalmann's been here. But in terms of the voice, I feel like with Joachim's writing, it's so it feels like it flows in a really lovely way, that it always takes a little bit of time to find a voice when you're translating, but I felt like it was maybe a little bit easier than with some other books. And I don't think I consciously thought about it. I knew there was a difference between the nature and the Kalmann's voice, and I did try and get Kalmann's right. That was very important, because as you were saying, that when other people are encountering Kalmann, it never feels in these books like that Kalmann is being mocked in any way. It feels very much that the humour comes from seeing the world through Kalmann's eyes. When you then have the contrast of how other people see it, Kalmann's way actually makes more sense. And that's a kind of a surprising...
And also in the communication with the other villagers, it's always, I mean, he as you were saying, he has his place. There is never a misunderstanding. They know how to take him, don't they? We don't have that strangeness.
Yeah.
So that's why that dialogue is so different to everything else in the book, because really you have that clashing.
Yeah. And I feel like with the second book, I got into that more in terms of more awareness with Kalmann's voice. With the second book, I would maybe draft something and think, no, he wouldn't say that. Like I'm putting a word in his mouth that he wouldn't say. And I think in the first one, I wasn't yet doing that much because I didn't know him as well. But so reading, I was saying that it's difficult when you read back over something that's a few years ago, because naturally, because you've learned and evolved in the meantime, you find bits that you would have done differently. And the bit that we were reading just then, and I had upon which, and I was thinking, I don't think Calvin would say upon which. I wish I could change that. But
Yeah.
just little things like that.
Yeah. Great.
It was. This is actually a good question because I took the sort of the rule that the way Kalmann speaks is very different to the way he thinks. So I would allow him to be much more eloquent when he thinks or he describes nature. But as soon as he opens his mouth, the words they come out very sparse and to the point, and maybe a little bit annoyed at sometimes. And it was an interesting process also with the editor, that there were some words that we took out, where she would say, okay, he can say all of this, but this word I wouldn't give him that, So it was kind of a tricky topic, what is he allowed to say or think? What makes him unbelievable? Which words, and we have to take them out. So this could have been one of these. What did you say?
Well, the one I said now, upon which actually
Oh,
is in
upon which,
there.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
that me
yeah.
reading it now, I feel.
So that, but then I realized with the second book, and I'm working on the third and last one. I just want to give him even more freedom and just give him that and also sort of evolve. So I think at this point we would just leave it in, also to make the text, to make it flow right, or maybe that is more important as well, to have sort of joy in reading the text too. Yeah.
Okay. So we thought it might be fun now for everyone to have a go at translating a section. So we've just had this interview, and after that, we have the section that I have put on the handout, where Kalmann watches back on his TV. He watches back the interview that he has given. And we're going to read that for you simply so that, because the section that we are all going to try our hand on follows on directly from that. So, Joachim, if you could read and suddenly, no, that's which language are we in? We are in German. Und plötzlich. So if we start repeating plötzlich and go to looking into the cover.
All right. Okay.
So you've got the English translation on your handout. Start with and suddenly.
The TV interview is being aired.
That's right.
Ja. Und plötzlich erschien ich auf dem Fernsehbildschirm und zwar ganz nah. Man sah nur meinen Cowboyhut, mein Gesicht und meine Brust mit dem Sheriffstern und ich sah irgendwie völlig anders aus als im richtigen Leben und ich war gar nicht zufrieden. Ich guckte richtig bescheuert, als hätte ich ein warmes Spiegelei unterm Hut. Und man sah auch, dass ich nicht gut drauf war, völlig genervt, misstrauisch. Und dann brachten sie den ganzen Schluss des Interviews, wo ich meine Vermutungen äußerte, dass Robert vielleicht von einem Eisbären gefressen worden war. Und weil ich in die Kamera guckte, hörte es sich an, als warnte ich die ganze Fernsehnation vor Eisbären. Und deswegen gab ich mir auch ein paar Ohrfeigen und ich schlug meine Faust aufs Salontischchen. Dass ich das Ölfass bearbeitet hatte, wurde zum Glück nicht gezeigt. Und darüber war ich sehr erleichtert. Aber Birtna war nun über ein Telefon live mit dem Fernsehstudio verbunden und sie beteuerte, dass man nicht davon ausgehe, dass sich ein Eisbär da oben auf der Meldrakasletta herumtreibe. Es gäbe dafür zumindest keine Hinweise und zudem würde man mehr als nur Blut finden, wenn jemand von einem Eisbären gefressen worden wäre, etwa zerfetzte Kleider oder abgenagte Knochen. was ich irgendwie logisch fand. Und jetzt kam ich mir noch blöder vor, wie der letzte Dorftrottel. Und ich war überzeugt, dass sich ganz Island über mich lustig machte. Ich wollte dann den Fernseher kaputt machen, doch plötzlich erschienen noch weitere Bewohner von Röverhöppen auf dem Bildschirm. Denn der Reporter und sein Kameramann mussten sich vor den Laden gestellt haben, um den Leuten aufzulauern. Elimborg etwa sagte, dass es kein Zufall sein könne, dass Robert da oben bei seinem Arktik-Hensch umgebracht worden war. Vielleicht ein Ritual, vermutete sie, wollte dann aber ihre Vermutung nicht weiter erläutern, auch wenn sie der Reporter darum bat. Ich meine ja nur, sagte Elimborg und schaute in die Kamera.
And now the next section fits exactly, so it comes directly afterwards. And we've just heard Edinburgh, so one of the villagers, and now Haldor, another one, is also stopped and also talks to the TV interviewer. So if you read that as well, and then we'll have a go at translating.
All the way to the end?
Auch Haldor bis Lichtfall.
Schlusslichtfalsch, ja. Auch Haldor wurde aufgehalten. Er hatte das Fenster seines Pickups runtergelassen und sagte, dass dieser Vorfall ganz schlimm für Röverhöpp sei, denn diese Negativberichterstattung könne verheerende Auswirkungen haben, zum Beispiel auf den Tourismus, wo man doch ums Überleben kämpfe hier oben. Wir, die wir von der Regierung nach der Einführung des Quotensystems einfach im Stich gelassen worden waren und heute ja noch immer einfach abgeschrieben, sagte er noch, dann aber nichts mehr. Und er hielt den Blick des Reporters stand, ohne in die Kamera zu schauen. Kaum war die Berichterstattung abgeschlossen, rief mich Noe auf Messenger an und lachte sich krumm. Und weil er so lachte, fand ich das Ganze dann doch auch ein wenig lustig. Und genau darum war Noe mein bester Freund. Und so machte ich den Fernseher nicht kaputt. Freunde sind dazu da, einander zum Lachen zu bringen. Und wer glaubt, dass Noe kein guter Freund war, liegt falsch.
Okay. I think this works really well because it is quite a contrast. So we have the quite formal language that Haldor uses, and then we have the language that Kalmann uses when he talks about Noe, was his best friend. They're quite different voices. So I don't know. Do you want to do this as an exercise, maybe with people around you? Let's just have a quick look at it. Let's see how it goes, and then of course we'll hear what Jamie has made of it.
How did that feel for a bit? How many people here don't speak German? So is there anyone that... Yeah, I thought there might be. What, just out of interest, what did you do while people were... Did you kind of
my
discuss...
new friend.
Okay.
She did all the work and I grunted and said, oh, that's interesting.
That's where I was stuck because I don't read.
What I tend to find, like with translation workshops, both being in them and having led them in the past, is that it's amazing how you can spend an entire morning just looking at one sentence, and you can have as many different translations as you have people in the room as well, and that's always so fascinating. And we were saying just now, because you asked me, would I translate it differently now? And I most likely would, because it was kind of 3-4 years ago, and if I didn't look at it and tried to produce the same thing, there would probably be differences in it. So how far did you get, out of interest? Did anyone get through a whole paragraph or just a couple of sentences? Or...
Well, I didn't write it down.
I can vouch for the fact that she got to the end.
Would anyone like to share?
Well, I gave Charles a rough translation.
You did, and it's an excellent translation.
So I was asking myself who Haldor really is. Why is he? So he's speaking about how the government's treating them, and he's speaking in a more sort of bureaucratic language.
Yes.
But I haven't read the book yet. I'd like to read it now. But so we were wondering, who is he?
Haldor is sort of the Mann für alles. He's he's taking care of the school building. He's there, sort of like a first aid person in town. Takes care a little bit of the green spaces in town. So you would sort of getting for all kinds of jobs, really. So obviously someone who cares a lot for Röverhöppen and sees Röverhöppen in this victim position in a way which is completely understandable too. But he's not a big talker and obviously a bit angry. Yeah.
What kind of challenges did you feel that there might be with that section? Is that the shift in the voices, or?
We still need you.
Sorry?
We still need you.
I think we were saying like the sentences are really long, so like where do you break them apart? Because English doesn't work the same way, so you wouldn't have like a sentence of basically the whole paragraph or like the you know. So like where do you stop and how do you still keep that flow? And we really struggled with that. We couldn't like really pinpoint, especially like in the first bit, where to like put the full stop and then like start a new sentence. And you can obviously start a sentence with "and," but it's just still like sort of like where do you? Because then you have that visual break, which you don't have here. So yeah, we really struggled with that. So
Yeah, there's a lot of translators do debate that a lot in terms of, is it a failure if you put the punctuation in a different place or you need more punctuation? But the reality often is that in order to kind of be more true to the feeling that the original text would give the reader, often does require you to put punctuation in a different place. Because punctuation is very much about helping us breathe, really, isn't it, in a text? It's kind of where you need to naturally breathe. And that's going to be different in different languages.
You have a lot more freedom in English, don't you, than in German?
Does anyone want to, if anyone did write it down, does anyone want to share a sentence?
Well, did you?
we didn't write anything down. We got sort of like held up with I think, I don't know if this is basically both of us being academics and couldn't switch off our analytical brain. And then we just, with the first sentence, we were like, aufgehalten. Okay, should we say stopped? No, that doesn't really like encompass what he meant. But then like we looked in the other text and we got ambush. And I was like, no, but that's not the same. So I think we just basically got stuck in the first sentence.
Oh, yeah.
We're just like overthinking everything. So like,
I think that is translation. So that's not just like, oh, that's academia brain or anything like that. It's utter fascination with, you know, the different ways you could convey this word and where the punctuation goes. And,
yeah.
and there are lots of people to whom they would think, well, you know, just do this, and why are you spending a whole morning thinking about where to put a full stop? But you either love that kind of thing or you don't think. Yeah.
Well, with aufgehalten, you have a nice cognate, don't you? The held up.
Being held up, yeah.
Yeah. So
But it doesn't quite apply in this context.
Well, I felt like that didn't feel right to
No,
me.
it doesn't feel right to me.
No.
I'm afraid I sort of read it and translated it in my head because I'm reading German, but so I got stuck on verheerende Auswirkungen because I understood it, but I couldn't think it was the verheerende, so I certainly understood the context. Also, I realised I needed some context for what follows. And, you know, it's like which quota system? I'm guessing the fish quota system. So that's what. But there's another word like held up, aufgehalten, einfach abgeschrieben. It was just written off. We were just written off, discarded. You know, if you wanted to make the fish reference, you'd say discarded. Like, you could do. I've not done it already.
I stumbled over the verheerend as well.
Yeah,
because
I
was
just,
thinking
yeah.
it's such a sort of inflated
Yes.
somehow over the top.
Yes, it's a
language
big,
there.
massively increasing.
Yeah,
I couldn't find a word for that. And the other expression we were discussing was lachte sich krumm, because I thought there's so many ways you could say that.
How do you say that?
Cracked up laughing.
Cracked up laughing,
Yes,
yeah, would
yes.
probably be closest to me if you wanted to be hiding and he pissed himself laughing.
Yeah.
Depends how strong you want your translation to be.
I think the Americans would say I was tickled pink.
I'd be tickled, but possibly not. I'm not sure I'd find that a particularly contemporary expression.
Positive or something.
In this, I heard it a lot in America.
Yeah,
It's just American.
I'm just
Maybe
wondering.
they're not contemporary.
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't spring to
Question is also whether Kalmann would say that.
He was really tickled. You might say tickled.
Yeah, tickled.
Tickled pink.
Tickled.
It kind of, it's not such a kind of physical thing. I think from what you were saying, this is more kind of I cracked up.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're tickled pink, you kind of sit there slightly kind of chuckling to
But
yourself.
it kind of fits
Not
here.
quite so-
Yeah, it does. I could see how it could fit.
But that's already great. I mean, it's a kind of, it's a real feeling for the emotion that's behind
Because he
that.
was pleased. So if you're tickled pink, you're pleased. You know,
Yeah.
you're happy. You know.
Yeah.
I was, I remember when I struggled, I still do struggle to a certain point, but I think it's a constant struggle if you are in this business. But, and also a lot of whining and complaining, just like the people in the Röverhöp. This is me too. But I remember giving one of my first books to somebody from the business and asked, do you think there's potential, that sort of thing. And he gave it back to me and he said, have you thought about translating? So sort of pushing me into, maybe you should not write books. But the thing is, I did try to translate a few texts and I struggled so hard. I find it the most difficult task. And I would get stuck with words and realizing in the end, okay, actually this word does not exist exactly, so I have to find other ways. I realized I'm not sure if I would actually have the energy, to do a good translation.
Jamie, I think it's time for you to read one.
Either aware of the choices. Haldor was stopped too. He had wound down the window of his pickup and said that this incident was really bad for Röverhöfen because this negative news report could have devastating consequences, on tourism, for example. And we were fighting to survive up here as it was, that after the introduction of the quota system, we had been left in the lurch by the government. Written off just like that, he said then, nothing more. And he held the reporter's gaze without looking into the camera. No sooner was the report finished than Noy called me on Messenger and laughed himself silly, and because he was laughing, I found the whole thing kind of funny after all. And that's precisely why Noy was my best friend, and so I didn't smash the TV. Friends are there to make one another laugh, and anyone who thinks Noy isn't a good friend is plain wrong. I was thinking about the Verheer, and I can't remember much about at the time, but it's just struck me that my dad has a tendency to maybe be a bit houndorish at times, and his word for things like that would always be devastating. So I think maybe that just kind of crept in.
Works really well. Great. Thank you very much. So there's a third one coming.
Yes.
Right. Do you want to tell us a little about that? Or is that no?
No, I mean, it's, I really want to, I didn't think there would be more than one, The first book I wrote, I wasn't even sure if it was going to be published at all, or if it would be the end of my career, really. And then it got picked up, and I went on a reading tour through Switzerland and Germany. And people came to me and they talked about Kalmann as if he were a good friend of theirs, And I caught myself thinking in a way, I wished I could tell Kalmann about this. That he is famous in Germany, and people love him. I would have loved to tell him that. So I realized he's stuck in my head like a true friend, like a person I know. Thought to myself, okay, what is he actually doing now? And then so I sort of allowed myself to continue, find another story. I told myself if I find a good plot that's worth telling, and I can set Kalmann there, then I'll do it. So I did a second one, and after the second one, I thought, okay, a third one, just to round it all up. If that's abrunden, that's probably the wrong translation there, but sort of to tie it all up, right? And that's what I'm working on. I use Kalmann to shed a light on social injustices, for example. I think the crime genre is really good for that. I don't see myself as a crime novelist. I have written 7 books by now, and 2 only are really crime, or if you want to call it crime, But I noticed those are great if you want to see some injustice somewhere. Mm-hmm. So the quota system they have put up in Iceland, which has many, many flaws, and is being discussed to this day. This was really a good vehicle, sort of, to talk about this. The second one is another story, but the third one is going to be about fish farming, aquaculture, which is a big topic in Iceland right now. Salmon fish farms. So there's a Norwegian company who comes to Røverhøvn and they want to establish fish farming there. Huge opportunity for Røverhøvn. But of course with a lot of downsides too. So again, we have Kalmann sort of in the middle of 2 parties clashing, sort of. Yeah. Something to look forward to?
Yeah.
Hope so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much. Any questions? Anything you want to ask or?
Noir on television is a very big business. There are Icelandic noir. So an obvious question is, have you thought or are you interested in an TV adaptation? And what might that look like in terms of a translation, both translating a novel into a screenplay and translating it into different languages?
Yeah, of course I would be interested, because it would mean I would gain more money. But since we are talking about translations here, it is quite difficult for me, actually. I realize this more often. So I grew up in Switzerland. I moved to Iceland. It's almost 20 years that I live in Iceland. I've gained citizenship. I speak Icelandic. My novels, they're mostly, apart from Tell, about Iceland, or they're placed in Iceland, so they're like proper Icelandic novels, But still, I am somewhere in between. So even today, we have most people here from Switzerland or some sort of connection to Switzerland. Maybe there's nobody here from Iceland, I'm guessing. Okay, there's not so many Icelanders overall, but and it has proved to be tricky for me. So I'm really blessed. Kalmann was translated into English. It was translated to other languages too, but it was not translated into any Nordic languages. Sweden, Finland, Denmark. No interest there at all. And I believe it's because I'm seen as a Swiss writer. Almost a little bit like a tourist in Iceland who fell in love with the country and is now writing about this. And that's why they are not interested in that. They are interested in Icelanders writing about Iceland. I understand this, of course, because I'm a bit like that too. It was snobbish too. If the name doesn't fit, sort of this Joachim B. Schmidt is such a German name on this cover. It doesn't really fit. I understand. It took me a long time to be accepted in Iceland as a writer, and I'm still working on. Still not quite. Not all doors are open when we talk about stipendia grants and stuff. It's still they're still not quite. They haven't let me in quite yet. Which brings us to the TV adaptation. First, there was a German and Swiss collaboration. They wanted to make a movie for cinema. That sort of collapsed in itself. By then, it was translated to Icelandic. It was my first book to be translated into Icelandic, and Icelanders picked it up right away. They said, "Oh, we want to do a TV series about this. This is great." And they are now trying to finance this, and it is really tricky because a lot of money comes from the Nordic countries. So Icelandic TV shows produced in Iceland, a lot of money comes from Denmark and Sweden or something. So, and there I'm not known, not translated, so there's no money from that side. There's money maybe coming from Germany, maybe from France, but it's not enough for Icelanders to make this whole TV series. So we're still kind of fighting for telling people that, yes, this is Icelandic, this is Icelandic through and through, even though it is written in German. So put somewhere, I'm between those two worlds and difficult to label, I think. Yeah.
But it so lends itself, doesn't it, to a TV adaptation? I can just see it.
Yes, me too. However, I would be a little bit scared about the casting of Kalmann, because I left it quite open. Also, the way he looks is actually quite open, and it's interesting how people and deliberately. I mean, I want the readers to fill in the gaps. I really want to give them the opportunity to create their own Kalmann. And I'm sure we have completely different Kalmanns in our... And I noticed this on readings. They comment, say, Kalmann, he's so tall, And to me, he's not very tall, I know somebody with Down syndrome too, You wrote this perfectly. And then I'm thinking, I did not have Down syndrome in mind, but that's the way I try to read it, just to give the opportunity for that, So I think we can only lose by casting Kalmann. Nobody will be happy, Everyone will say, no, that's not the Kalmann I have seen. Or we find somebody brilliant, and then it will be great. But that could be really tricky.
That happens with every TV adaptation.
Probably when the character is so specific, yeah.
I mean, what happens then once you've seen it? It's very hard not to see that person in your mind. So
Anyway, I want to pick up on something you said about sort of not being quite not accepted in Iceland, but what you were saying about sort of being in between, you're a Swiss author in Iceland, but you've lived there, you've got citizenship, and I think like sort of you bring that third layer in with the English translation, that you've got sort of like three cultures interacting suddenly. How did you feel, like both of you perhaps, with that process? I mean, obviously you know both cultures really well, I guess, growing up in Switzerland and then moving to Iceland. But for you, that was both, I guess, like, I know Switzerland isn't part of the novel, but it's sort of like still maybe in the way you write, because you obviously write in German. So it's, yeah, like how did that process feel like with all the different cultures coming in, I guess?
I like that. I was thinking about a novel by an Austrian South Korean writer I translated years ago called Anna Kim. She wrote a novel called Die große Heimkehr, and that was set in South Korea. And I knew very little about the Korean peninsula, so that was really fascinating. And we were on a residency together, and we went for long walks, and she explained things to me. And it was even little stuff like her explaining low tables they would have and the way the rooms were. I think because I've always liked getting to know new cultures, I like it when there are additional ones brought into German language books that I'm translating. And it also presents new opportunities and gifts. And so the Joachim's novel Osman, which I'm currently translating, he's very kindly provided a PDF with all the questions I could think of to ask, but before I've asked them, annotated in the PDF. And some of them are kind of links to, this is what this looks like, and, Icelandic. And sometimes it's very early draft at the moment, but I've used the Icelandic word instead of using the German word, because it feels like it will work better for the English. So it's weaving things in, and I think it's really, it enriches stuff, I feel.
Yeah. I wished I had done this earlier, because I already translated so much from Icelandic into my research, meeting people, talking to them. It all goes on in Icelandic. So when I write, it sometimes already feels a little bit like I'm translating, especially with Osman, which is through and through Icelandic, and a person who existed and who've written poems. So I take some of them and I translated them to German, which was really hard. Especially within those poems, I think I gave you also the translation of the Icelandic poems as if they were translated word by word in a way, because I obviously had to change a little bit to make it rhyme. So I think this combo is very unusual. I don't think you're probably the only translator of Icelandic books who has never been to Iceland.
Could be. I do want to rectify that pretty soon.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's been a really nice conversation, and I've learned a lot. So thank you very much for coming.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.